Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Stefan Burns. If you are new here, hello and welcome. We are going to get started with a pretty comprehensive live stream today. Just want to make sure everything's looking good. Before we get rolling, we will do a question and answer. This is going to be a more relaxed live stream today. Just kind of almost a hangout today, because I really don't want to stress myself going crazy, running through everything super quickly. And I feel like right now just having a space here on the internet while all this stuff is unfolding will be worthwhile for a lot of people, be valuable for a lot of people. So hi, hello, welcome. My name is Stefan Burns. I'm a geophysicist, geologist, also just someone that likes to study and research into a lot of things. So a little bit of a Renaissance man, you could say, and we are going to take that and apply it across some of the areas that I find very, very interesting. That's going to be space weather. We're going to talk about the financial markets because, wow, what a decline we are in right now, at least with Bitcoin. I mean, ooh, not good. So we'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about just in general what I see kind of coming up for the next few months in 2025 and 2026, because the key word is societal unrest. I mean, the title is solar activity explodes, crypto plummets, or even probably more comprehensive in less than 24 hours, financial markets plummet, and then just social unrest increases. So yeah, a lot to discuss today. I want to get this size correctly. And yeah, I mean, look at this decline right there, just dramatic. And I actually had a little bit of, I had precognition about this yesterday, and I've had precognition about this for more than a month now. But last night, it really clicked in, like 100% guaranteed this is going to happen. We'll talk about that. I not only look at just the broader macro picture for this stuff, but also I utilize things like astrology. So we'll go into, and even divination. There's so many different things pointing in the same direction. That's why I'm including a segment on the financial market in this video. But we will start with solar activity, the bread and butter, the cornbread of the meal, what everyone likes, because we've had an explosion of solar flares today. In less than 24 hours, we've had 6 M-class flares. This video starts on the 1st of February. We do see some activity. We see this big Giga Chad sunspot group right there. A huge amount of growth in this part right there. And look at that, just absolutely boiling with activity. So to go down the list, these are all M-class flares. It was a 3.0 M-class flare, a 1.4 M-class flare, then a 5.1, which was the strongest of the bunch. And then a 1.2 M-class flare, a 2.7, and a 4.1. And while this was occurring, we had explosions directly opposite on the far side of the sun, powerful enough to create halo coronal mass ejections. And we just had some new ones kind of launch off that are still being analyzed by space weather forecasters. We will do that live. So not only do we have all this activity on the sun with this sunspot group that's been growing super rapidly and right in the Earth direct bullseye zone, as I discussed in yesterday's video, we also have stuff happening exactly opposite the sun. So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening right now. I'm going to do the best I can to bring it all together comprehensively, but you're going to want to stay and just kind of watch through so you can get all of it, because there's certain things in life you can't encapsulate in like 90 seconds. Like, the TikTok era has created so much brain rot. It's a serious problem. So thank you, Shooter, for the super thanks. Let us look at the growth of this Giga Chad sunspot group. I'm sure we'll watch this video a lot more. I'll put it up when we're doing the Q&A. So this is really insane. If you watch the sun at all, seeing this sort of growth is really incredible. You don't get this every day. You don't get, well, maybe you get this every solar maximum. I'm not sure though about solar cycle 24. But look at, first off, all the cores. Then we get this new flux pushed up here. Huge growth down here, 3982, now becoming the big main flare player. And there's even growth popping up now in this northeast quadrant just in the past 6 hours or so. So this is really incredible. This is GigaChad cluster right here, and then this group expanding in 3982, which is closest to the largest one here as well, 3981. So these guys really taking over. And I can actually pause this and go to that final frame so we can see what I'm talking about. Look at that. I mean, a huge section of sunspots on the sun. And if we, actually I need to pull something up so you can see this. All the sunspots on the sun right now are almost effectively concentrated just within this cluster, which is really incredible. So I can pull up two different data slides here so you can see this, because this really kind of drives it home. Sunspots are now over 150, which is quite significant. And if we go here, we can see, look, there's almost no sunspots throughout the rest of the sun. They're all concentrated there, and this guy's been growing super crazy, super fast. We looked at the intensitygram. Let's look at the magnetogram. This explains why it's been so explosive. Punch in on 3982. Look at the polarity mixing that's occurring. Look how fluid it is. These areas over here, let me scroll around a little bit. These areas over here, they are kind of more static, and you can just see that with the magnetogram. So these blues and greens are positive polarity, and here we have these negative polarities, and they're kind of like, they're not really interacting much. I mean, you do have a little bit of mixing right there. You have a little bit of a ring of negative polarity around that core. I mean, just in general, this cluster has been very active, but look at the difference, right? Just incredible, the difference between what we have here and what's been pushed out just recently with 3982, quickly looking like a significant flare player. I'm actually surprised that we haven't had an X-class flare from this group yet. You can see that negative polarity there penetrating into that positive polarity core. Look at the mixing there, the fluidity. So things are evolving rapidly, and we're seeing that mirror here on Earth. So the sun, 99.86% of the mass of the solar system, you know, the repository of consciousness in our solar system other than the Earth, it is undergoing these really chaotic changes right now, and we're seeing that mirrored here on Earth, especially in industry, like for the financial markets. Of all the financial markets, cryptocurrency are the ones that are completely international, and they never shut off. So while they're still in their infancy, they very much are more connected to kind of like the zeitgeist and the public collective consciousness in many ways. And that's why there's a mix between people that study into kind of spiritual things and cryptocurrency that I found. So we'll talk about that more later, but I think what we're seeing here on Earth is really much reflecting what we're seeing with the sun. We are in solar maximum. That means that the sun's magnetic field is the most chaotic. A magnetic field is a field of force, of energy, of potential. And right now it's just completely going nuts, and will continue to do so for the next 2 years or so, because it's flipping its polarity. And that is just, in general, you could say, changing kind of the quantum reality framework that we are living in, that is allowing new things to manifest. If we go quickly to this graphic here, I showed this on the last live stream, but I want to show it again. I've shown this a few times. Relationship between solar activity and spontaneous social processes. These are things that kind of explode out of nowhere. So it's not like a long plan that's formulated and then gets enacted, even though it can be a big change. No, this is just like a sudden eruption. And so we see that a whole bunch of revolutions plot right with the high of solar activity across these different solar cycles. That's just what we see. We see ourselves being in resonance with these energies. And so when you have heightened solar energy, that increases just in general the energy on the planet, increases the volatility. There's more chaos. What is chaos? Chaos is just an order beyond our understanding. Order means there's a structure and kind of a path to things. So we are able to see order like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A random number generator would be chaotic to us. We just get the end result, but they're usually quite simple. If some random number generators can be quite simple if you know exactly what it is, but just the output can seem chaotic. So there's an order behind things, and chaos is just an order beyond our current comprehension. So there's more chaos right now, and polarization is increasing. And so while polarization is increasing, at least on the sun, we're also seeing that polarization start to mix, right? We have strong polarity. There does seem to be some mixing. So that also has to be taken into account with what is occurring globally. We're seeing just governments crumble left and right. I mean, Germany, France, United States has, our new government, and there's a lot of people that don't like that. I mean, I wouldn't say our government's crumbled like some of the coalition governments in Europe, but definitely not everyone's on board. So yeah, there's a lot happening. Now, I have this other video to show you, just so we can kind of see one of the other factors that's at play right now. And that is, this is our C3 chronograph view for just today. And we see this far side halo coronal mass ejection right there. We know that's not a Earth-facing halo coronal mass ejection, that shock wave that goes out, because that wasn't attributed to one of the solar flares that occurred today. So directly opposite the Earth right now, there's also explosive activity that's occurring. And we'll see some at the very end of this video. Just watch. Right there, big new explosion coming out, and that has yet to be determined whether that is Earth-facing or not. And I think it probably is not. I think it's also probably another far side, showing that there's been two really powerful far side explosions, even more powerful than what we've been seeing on the Earth-facing side, which has been quite significant. 6M class flares, massive growth in 3982. There's even more activity on the far side, which I would say is more representative of like your unconscious. So you have your conscious, you have your unconscious, right? What's facing you is conscious, what's behind is unconscious. So there's a lot also happening in the background. Here we have Mercury. If you're wondering what that is, I'll hit play again. Here we have the planet Mercury performing a superior conjunction with the sun. That comes up on the 8th or the 9th of February. And then we also have a full moon right around that time. So this is already a pretty energetic event that occurs. Mercury being the fastest planet in its orbital rotation. The messenger of the gods, being seen as the fastest of the gods, and being connected to things like our financial markets and trade and more, our mind. And so when it's performing a superior conjunction, it's actually moving the fastest through the night sky, about 2 degrees per day. So here we have Mercury, the planet of speed, accelerating as fast as about to go conjunct the sun, a very powerful planetary transit. And then you have a full moon in Leo, which is the sign of the sun, right at the same time. So we're building up to that. We're building up to that, and we've had really big world events with Leo full moons. Just 2 years ago, we had the earthquake sequence in Turkey, 7.8, 7.5, exact on the Leo full moon. I was just nearby in Egypt for that. So that was wild. So we can see this slowly building. I made a video about the acceleration of everything. It is happening right now. I would like to spend a little bit of time now speaking about the financial markets, because this is something that I cover. I personally have an interest in this. I want to have a house one day. I want to be successful. I want to do well. So, and it's interesting. You see an overlap often with geophysicists and financial people. It's like the mind's kind of tuned the same way, because you're just looking at charts and data and rhythms and patterns. So it's interesting. So we are seeing some big volatility in the crypto markets. And this is probably in advance of what we're going to see in the financial markets. And none of this is financial advice. I think that's such a dumb thing, but whatever. None of it's financial advice. We're just going to go over observations here. This is because these things run 24/7. We're looking at the biggest one, Bitcoin, if you don't know about it, I'm sure you do. And they often, if you watch crypto, I have been watching it for a while, it will front run everything typically. Not always, but almost always it will front run. Get the it's the leading indicator. It's the canary in the coal mine, and it'll get its volatility out, and then everything else will kind of catch up to it because they're a little slower. Thank you, Cher, for the super thanks. So I was looking at the astrology and of the next like 2-3 months, and it all clicked together last night. I've been thinking about this for a while. I mean, I already had an I-Ching reading that I did that gave me some guidance. I already had some intuition and synchronicity that gave me some guidance, but then it finally clicked together for me. Again, I just can't be 100% guaranteed in this, but I think this is going to occur. This is what I'm going off of, okay? So just take that for what it's worth. But I was looking at the upcoming planetary cycles we have. We have Venus retrograde and we have Mercury retrograde, and they're occurring basically at the same time. So I can actually show you that really quickly because it's pretty crazy what they're doing. It's quite nice. Just in terms of like looking at it in the sky, you could say. But let's get this going here. And we'll turn this off really quick. We'll go back to it, don't worry. But here we have the movement of Mercury going all the way till they start to go retrograde. Wade, thank you for the super thanks. It catches up to Venus, who starts to go retrograde, and then they both go back, conjunct the Sun, Cazimi, hang out with Neptune and Saturn, and move on from there. And the lunar nodes are also right in that area. The lunar nodes are representative of like faded energy points. And this is after it's passing through Pluto, which just moved. We got all the outer planets changing signs. This is Western Tropical. Here we're just looking at the actual night sky position. But the fact that Venus and Mercury are both going retrograde at the same time and then initiating this push into a new part of the sky with Neptune and Saturn is quite significant. So let me explain. Venus is the lesser benefic, and she's connected to, among many things, money. What we value, so we can like reevaluate things when there's Venus retrogrades, and also just money itself and financial markets are very much connected to Venus. Mercury is connected to commerce and trade and the movement and flow of things. And so both of them going retrograde is a sign that there's going to be some sea change in those things at the same time. And they're going retrograde together. It's not like Mercury is going retrograde like 2 signs up or something in a different part of the sky. They're going retrograde almost exactly together as you saw. Robert, thank you for the super thanks. They're going retrograde at the same time. Meanwhile, the other benefic, Jupiter, the greater benefic, he is right now in his fall in Gemini. And Jupiter, being the planet of expansion, is bringing this huge growth to a whole bunch of Gemini things like AI and just information and data. But Jupiter being in his fall means that there's some kind of negative outcome to this. Like we're a little bit delulu as a society on this, and we're going to have that reckoning and realization once things kind of clear up and move on. So Venus and Mercury are doing this retrograde while Jupiter is a little delulu, and they're doing it in Aries and Pisces, which is really interesting because it lines up synchronistically with the I-Ching reading that I did perfectly. Aries is a sign of the war god Aries, and so them both going into Aries shows that there's conflict, some sort of conflict, and then a reevaluation as they retreat back into Pisces, water, double body water. And Venus is in her fall in Aries. She does not do well there. I have a lot of experience with that, okay? So she does not do well in Aries, and Venus, of course, being related to our money and what we value. And so I was thinking about all this. This is like days and weeks ago. I was thinking about all this. I was like, I know there's some connection to like the markets with this, but I couldn't place it. And then I thought ahead about, okay, eventually they're going to get through this whole retrograde thing. Eventually Venus will move into Taurus, which is a sign of her domicile. That's her home temple. Taurus being representative of money and wealth and, you know, beautiful, pleasant things. So Venus moving into Taurus is a very good thing. And so that kind of puts, in my mind, an upper bound on what we're seeing. Like that's going to be, once Venus is in Taurus in May, things are probably going to be a lot smoother sailing. And that helped me to then put the timeline together. So I specifically have here, Venus will be in Taurus starting on, there we go. Venus will be in Taurus, let me move this. Venus will be in Taurus starting on June 6th. And then in fact, at the beginning of July, on July 4th, she will conjunct Uranus at 29 degrees 52 arc minutes, the critical degree of Taurus, the very end, Uranus wrapping up his time in Taurus. and Uranus being connected to digitization and AI, and he's a very Promethean character. All those things that are promising of the future, all the Aquarian principles are kind of connected to Uranus. Venus will conjunct Uranus on July 4th. She immediately moves into Gemini on the 4th, and then Uranus moves into Gemini on the 7th of July. And so that looks very positive and benefic. And so once we get to June, once we get to July, I think things are good. But before that, we have this whole retrograde thing. So she will start to go retrograde, Venus will start to go retrograde on March 2nd, but she actually enters into Aries on the 4th. So we start to get that change, that conflict-driven characteristic to all things Venusian on the 4th. We're even kind of feeling that already, as you can see. And then Mercury moves into Aries on the 4th of March, right after Venus stations retrograde. And if we look at the entire period here, Venus is in Aries from, let me get this. Venus is in Pisces from March 28th to the 30th. So Venus is in Aries from March 2nd to the 28th. Then she goes back into Pisces to kind of cool off. Now she's exalted again. And so I think that is when we can start to see things shift once more. And this relates to the I-Ching that I did. Before we get to that though, Mercury will be in Pisces from the 30th of March to April 16th. So very, very similar. March 28th to April 30th for Venus, March 30th to April 16th for Mercury, both in Pisces, and then they both station direct and move on. Thanks, Tommy, for the super thanks. So the I-Ching that I did was actually quite a while ago. I mean, maybe like a month ago now, I did an I-Ching reading for a financial asset that I had just recently accumulated. And I was like, I feel like I could get some more guidance on this. If you're not aware, the I-Ching is a way to do divination. It's a Chinese method of divination. You just flip coins. We could do one on the live right now. It's super easy. So I did an I-Ching, like, do I hold this asset or do I sell it? And it was quite synchronistic at the time, even more so now that I've examined the retrogrades of Venus and Mercury. So the I-Ching that I got was number 6, which is conflict, and it had 2 changing lines. So when you have changing lines, it changes it to another hexagram. And the hexagram that follows conflict, what it changes to is abysmal. This is number 6, conflict, changing to number 24, abysmal. And conflict is the element heaven over the element water. And then abysmal is the element water over water. And so this really makes sense because we have heaven over water, water being heavy, being dense, right? It can flow and move down things. Water can quickly go down, right? It can also spring back up, right? You know, actual spring coming out of the ground. But water has this amazing ability to very quickly flow and move. Heaven very much is representative of the optimism that a lot of people have right now. There's a lot of people that are looking at the future. They see the opportunity, and there is a tremendous amount of opportunity. I'm overall very optimistic about the future, but there's this conflict between the two where we're seeing things, but the reality may be a little different, right? And then the changing lines gave the guidance. You know, each changing line gives you a little phrase if you've never done the I-Ching. And what it said was A, obstructed, and B, cautious halt halfway. Good fortune if you do that. So there's some sort of obstruction because of this conflict, right? Number 6, conflict. And if you do a cautious halt halfway, re-examine things, then there's good fortune in that. And so I did this I-Ching, and the reason actually I did the I-Ching is because I had a calendar alert that I made for myself in the past. I don't remember how long ago, it was just a few months ago, that said, sell some of that stuff right now. Like, thank you, like, go ahead and do that, sell that. And I didn't really want to at the time. Like, I saw the alert, I was like, what was past Stefan thinking when he put that alert in? Thank you, Natalie, for the super thanks. And let's actually go to specifically I can show you specifically when this was happening. And we'll just go here to, because I like Dogecoin. And I've liked Dogecoin for a long time, way longer than a lot of people. First heard about it in college, actually, but I did not buy any back in college. That would have been amazing. I would have bought it right when it launched if I had looked into it back then. So I set this calendar alert sometime back here for Dogecoin. I don't know, somewhere way back in there. Last year, 2024. And then I get the alert right here saying, sell some, thank me later. And so I did the I-Ching right there, and I followed through with it. I went ahead, I was like, no, I'm getting kind of just a little bit of a spidey sense here. I sold it, and that's where we are right now. So I'm glad I listened to that. But here's how it goes full circle. It goes from conflict to abysmal, heaven over water to water over water. Well, what is the sign of Pisces? It's a double-bodied water sign, perfectly representative of abysmal, right? Water over water. And abysmal, the phrase for abysmal is really interesting. It's not saying like the world's going to end or something. It says, sincere success in heart, whatever you do succeeds. So it's very much representative, like if you go to this extremely low place, the bottom of the bottom, but you really find something deep within you that you sincerely believe in, love, heart-centered, you'll be successful in that as you rise up from that abysmal place. And so what this is telling me, the I-Ching reading, the retrograde cycle that I talked about, and we're already seeing this play out. I've been waiting, right? If we go back, what was this? This is January 4th. I've been waiting a month now for this to happen. It finally happened today. And I got the precognition that I was going to last night. I was like, definitely something's brewing. Because this whole trade war, right? Conflict. That was a big promise of the President of the United States before he was elected. And he's been following through on everything that he said, basically. And so that story, people didn't want to believe it. They didn't want to believe it because back in 2016 and 2020, there's a lot of things that the President of the United States said that he never did. This time he's a little different. And so now this trade war, conflict, international, is really building and brewing. And you're going to have Venus and Mercury in the sign of Aries, the sign of the war god of conflict, from, again, March 2nd to the 28th for Venus. And then also from the 4th to the 30th for Mercury. So money, what you value, is going to change under conflict, and then also trade, commerce, and more, ruled by Mercury. And there's more to it. So I think what's going to happen is that during that retrograde period is when we're going to see these sharp declines. And the key word again with the I-Ching is number 24. It's abysmal. Like at the bottom, like the abysmal plane, right? There's going to be like no hope, or that's at least going to be the headlines. Like everything's over. It's not good, right? But I think it's going to be a temporary place that we have to go to. Thank you, Naomi, for the super thanks. So abysmal, this really dark place, that heaven element, it goes from heaven over water to water over water. So all that optimism that you've been seeing, a lot of it, I mean, of course, there's a lot of conflict and polarization too in the headlines. You can't pay them too much attention. A lot of them are garbage too. But a lot of optimism is going to evaporate as like the sheep all of a sudden turn that direction because, you know, people, they reorient really quickly to the magnetic field. Solar activity is going to be pumping and churning the entire time. And then at that abysmal place, that is the time to really find what is in your heart, deeply set, your passion, your soul purpose, life mission, to proceed forward with that. I think there's going to be great success for anyone that decides to pursue something at that moment in time. And keep in mind that Venus will be in Taurus in June, and she will have that incredible conjunction with Uranus at the final degree on July 4th, and then both of them shift into Gemini on the 4th and then on the 7th for Uranus. So that right there is kind of that upper bound that puts everything else into perspective and into a timeline, I would say. And I think once we have Venus and Mercury in Pisces in that abysmal place, that date specifically would be the 13th of April for Venus turning direct in Pisces, and then it would be the 7th of April for Mercury to turn direct. So April 7th to April 13th is probably the low point, at least for the abysmal period. And then from there, we'll probably slowly chug back up before things start to really accelerate in May. None of this is financial advice, just based off of a whole bunch of synchronicity and more. Thank you, Shooter, for the second super thanks. Yeah, well, I got the haircut. You know, I needed to get it cut. I look a lot better now. It was just too much when it was long. And thank you, Jane, for the super thanks. Thank you so much. So yeah, another financial advice. I mean, if we go into it more as well, here's the basic premise, and you know, take this for what it's worth. Conflict. We have that with the I-Ching, but conflict. We have a lot of martial energy. We also have Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries. And they're going to be kind of moving at that boundary between Pisces and Aries until 2026, February. They go conjunct at 0 degrees. We have the lunar nodes right now at the cusp of Aries and Pisces. And we also have some interesting eclipse energies occurring in Pisces and Aries for this eclipse season. So, and continuing on for Pisces. So we have a lot of energy there at that boundary. There's this trade war is kind of coming to shape, right? This big reorganization of the global order and international politics and more, because the sun is creating this greater amount of chaos on our planet through resonance. The sun is its most chaotic right now. The solar cycle is the strongest it's been since solar cycle 23. We can check it out. There's our X-ray flux for the day, by the way. So you can see just how that uptrend of solar energy has been just immediately bumped up and stayed elevated now. But if we go to our solar cycle progression really quick, yeah, as you can see, I have a lot to talk about. That's why I did the live stream today. So here, let me zoom out. Yeah, there we go. Solar cycle 25, stronger than 24, getting pretty close to solar cycle 23 in equivalence right there. So they look very similar. And this may be part of a double top. We've had that with these past 2 solar cycles. We will see. Very unlikely that we just slide down from there. Almost certainly we'll have some sort of like second rally, but we are kind of getting close to the center of this maximum period. But we haven't had this much chaos on the sun since the early 2000s with the dot-com crash. Think about that. That was pretty significant. And then 2008 just brought it right back down to where it went. The financial crisis. So there is going to be this trade war. It's already taking shape. People are now starting to take it seriously, realizing that the President of the United States is not fooling around when he's talking about this, whereas maybe 8 years ago he was, or at least at times he was. And then what that triggers, I mean, anyone that watches this stuff, people just want a less risky asset. You don't want to be holding on to risk assets during some sort of conflict. So everything denominates down to the US dollar or other fiat currencies like the euro, but the US dollar is the final denomination. And because right now US interest rates are high, tons of people are parking their cash in US bonds because the US dollar is super strong right now. The DXY index is charging, euro is pretty low, the pound is starting to slip, all the other like the New Zealand dollar, the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, they all just suck right now. All the other like more third world emerging markets like the Turkish lira, there's a whole bunch that have just completely been obliterated against the dollar. Everything settles to the dollar when there's a flight to safety and people are risking off. And crypto assets are typically seen as risky. But here's what happens. This is a trade war. You have these tariffs being imposed. I know myself as someone that buys different products, like I'm thinking like, should I stock up on some of this stuff now? So there's going to be this burst of spending for people to get ahead of the tariffs. We're already seeing that with the gold market. Tons of gold moving from London to New York. So you're going to have this increase in inflation, maybe transient, but because you get this big push in spending, you'll get this increase in inflation as a result. And those numbers are going to come out. They're not going to be good. The bond market is already rallying really high. If you look at the longer time frame, like the bond market in the UK it's a total rout. And with that inflation, you then have evasion, because now people are going to look at how you can get around all these different tariffs that are established, how you can move money around and do it in a way that's not that conspicuous. And so crypto is basically designed perfectly for that. And so I would say the three main ones that people will probably use will be Bitcoin, because it's well known. Then you also have Monero, because it's completely private. But the problem with Monero is it's not on that many exchanges, so it's difficult to get a hold of. And then you also have Litecoin, which is available on all the exchanges, but it has privacy features where you can hide how much Litecoin you have. It's much faster, much cheaper to send than Bitcoin. And that feature, the privacy feature of Litecoin, is called Mimblewimble. It's from Harry Potter, you know. So I think what we'll see, this is just a hypothesis, but I think what we'll see is after that flight to safety, during that abysmal period, people will start to really have to go in on some of these new Aquarian technologies to kind of work around the new world kind of playing field. And crypto is going to be a big part of that, because now it's a big enough, just in general, asset class to support some of this stuff. It has the technological capability, whereas 5 years ago, it just simply wasn't mature enough. Now it is. And with that, even if people are just using this for transmitting money around, I think you're going to start to see those assets grow. We already see that Bitcoin is an amazing hedge against inflation over the long term as a store of value. And so it's still a risk asset. You don't want to be holding Bitcoin or something like that when there's a huge crash. It will go down. But as a long-term store of value, it is quite good. Now, where's the... I had it up earlier. Let me pull it up again. Thank you, Inspired Gun, for the super thanks. You guys are liking this live stream today. It's a different one. I like to buck against staying in a niche and just never leaving a niche. Let's actually go to like the 1 week time frame here, because you can see. Oh yeah, I need to switch this over. Yeah, there we go. Not that. This. We can see the store value properties of Bitcoin since its inception using weekly candles there. So long term, amazing against the debasement of fiat currency. So long term, people will go to this. After you get that flash crash, people just want dollars. Where do they move it? They start to reorganize into things that A, will avoid inflation, and then B, are also easily moved internationally. That would be my hypothesis. We'll just have to wait and see. And there's very few assets that have done better than Bitcoin. If I have to say, I mean, Dogecoin is one of them. Long term, Dogecoin is one of the few assets that's grown against Bitcoin. But I just like the meme. That's all it is. I'm not here to pump it. I just had it for a long time, and I think it's cool. So that is kind of what I think is going to occur. We'll just have to wait and see. We really just don't know. And I wish I could tell you with 100% certainty, but I can't. That's just beyond my ability, but I've outlined all the different synchronicities and the astrology and also just a lot of the financial market data out there to kind of put a very solid foundation on my hypothesis, I feel like. Thank you, Jan, for the super thanks. So if anyone would like to ask a question, now is the time. Please type at Stefan Burns. We will do a question and answer. And we'll run through some questions, and yeah, we will follow in on that. We can look at this. Looks like Bitcoin started to really increase again. It had a dead cat bounce. It looked like. I mean, I don't think. Let's go back here. I don't think that that's going to just start charging up again, because again, I laid out that timeline. I think this is just the first shock in the system. And to share just a little tip. As someone who's watched these crypto markets for a long time, often when you see a pump on a crypto, it will go back to there temporarily. That first initial leg up before the rest of the pump, it will touch there just briefly. If you look through the charts historically, you'll see a whole bunch of times where it does that. So Dubstep Kid 801 asks, any geophysics related things with the planets that are in the sky currently? Yeah, we have all the different planetary parades, but really I think it's the, and I think I actually have it still. Well, we have Mercury Cazimi, that's coming up. That's adding this acceleration, this charge, everything. We have that full moon, and then we have the whole Venus-Mercury retrograde, which I explained. What are my thoughts on the blood moon coming in March 14th? I have not looked at that yet. And I just want to make sure my streaming's good because it looked like I was lagging just a little bit. It says it's okay. I can look at the ephemeris data, and so we can do that. Also, we've had this earthquake swarm in Greece, which I've been wanting to discuss. All of these like magnitude 4s, check this out. A whole bunch of magnitude 4s in Greece right next to an old like massive volcanic caldera there. It's probably Santorini. I'm not exactly sure, but you can see it plain as day. So new volcanic activity waking up in the Aegean, possible. It's possible. I'll just have to do a video on the blood moon. I don't think I have time to cover it right now because I'd have to look at everything. How large of a CME would hit? How large of a coronal mass ejection hit would it take to wipe out all of the crypto? It would have to fry every single node and network. So that's the thing. A lot of people talk about solar activity and they talk about solar activity and blockchain and how it's, you know, being very digital. It's vulnerable to all that. But of all the different technologies, I would say that cryptocurrencies are actually, of the technologies, right? Still technologies, still at risk of all this. But all of them, it's probably the most resilient and anti-fragile because it is maintained by decentralized networks. And so you can knock out 50% of the miners for say, let's say, of a proof of work network. There's a few of them still, right? Let's say you knock out 50% of the miners. Yeah, the hash rate will go down and you'll have some problems, but the network will still keep pumping. It'll still keep producing blocks. Whereas if some certain centralized systems, you knock out one server grid in Utah, let's say, and it's gone. Boom, done. And so I would say it's actually a pretty good technology to have because of the chance of things like super flares or Carrington class events. How low do you expect Bitcoin to hit? That's from Void. That's kind of a tough one, but I hinted at it earlier with this, but I honestly, I don't have a number in mind. I just more have a time range. Because I think sometimes we get caught in numbers and we lose sight of like the actual progression of these waves of activity. We know that we have a macro wave for Bitcoin because of its halving cycle. That's a 4-year cycle, and we know that's a positive influence on the price. And if we get this inflation, but then we get this market volatility and we get a big drop in the S&P and other markets, etc., then the Fed will probably stop quantitative tightening and go to quantitative easing. And that will trigger then a market rally as well, even if inflation's a little hot, because it's not worth the huge downturn risk. It'll be exactly like what happened in March of 2022, if that's the case. But this right here is looking pretty good. The top of the prior high, 75K. But really like the I-Ching reading I did, it said abysmal, like abysmal. I think like abysmal is a pretty dark place. So I don't know where that goes. And I'm not hoping that happens. But I'm prepared for it, right? If we go to the abysmal place, whatever I have, I'm happy with it going there temporarily. And I'm glad I pulled out what I did for it to be fluid for when we perhaps do go to an abysmal place temporarily. I don't think it's going to be long, but I think we will have that shakeout in order to give people a sense of renewed optimism for financial markets to continue going up, because things are so extended right now. If we look at the S&P 500, this should be it right here. Yeah, things are just too extended out. There needs to be a shakeout for people to get that renewed sense that they're getting a deal. People just want a deal. And then we're talking about like the strategic Bitcoin reserve for the United States. All the other countries will fall in line if that occurs. And so I think that's just one of the things that's required. to have a little bit of a shakeout. Are there any chances of internet disruption anytime soon from Somya? And no, unless we get some sort of big super flare impact, I don't think we have a risk of that. Not a super flare. I said that casually. I meant more like just some sort of coronal mass ejection that's of significance. Am I lagging at all? I just want to make sure because it's lagging on my end. Is everything good? Okay, I saw some hearts. So, and then another question was hold or sell silver. Well, I think in general, precious metals are going to be useful going into the future. And they're going to be valuable. So in the event of a market crash, yeah, lag. You are lagging. Okay. Lagging a bit, slight lag, no lag, normal. Yes, lagging and glitching. Let me do this. Let's just close this out totally. Okay, maybe I'm better now. I closed out, maybe I had a little bit too much on my screen. So yeah, I think I was just running my memory too hot. We were cooking. We were cooking, folks. Okay, good. So yeah, if you have more questions, Q&A, Stefan Burns, we'll run through them. And then at some point I'll sign off. Good, good, good. We're back to normal. So yeah, in terms of precious metals, I would think that just if you are someone that accumulates them, I have just a little bit. I think, just put in what you're fine, just letting it sit for 10, 20 years. None of this financial advice, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I think we all know that. But I'm not big on timing things. But I only honestly did a little bit of timing on this one because I had my past self sending me the calendar alert saying, sell me and thank me later. And I did, and I was very happy I did. And then I did the I-Ching and also looked at the astrology. And well, Harrow says, can you do an I-Ching for Ireland? I don't know, about what. I would recommend you do it yourself. Ask a question and do the I-Ching. PDX Music 1 says Abysmal is April 7th to 13th, if I heard that right. But that's the period when both Venus and Mercury are going to station direct after their retrograde in Pisces, which is a double body water sign. And the I-Ching for Abysmal is water over water. So that seems to be the center point for that. But the abysmal plane in the bottom of the ocean, this is what I think of. It's like super dark, super deep, super flat. It takes a while to get out of it. You go down the continental shelf, you're going to be swimming or walking for a while, and then eventually you'll come back up somewhere else out of that abysmal plane. And so I think we're going to be there for some time, but the upper bound on this is probably things are going to be looking pretty good starting June when Venus moves into Taurus. I think things will start to move quickly then in a beneficial direction after this shakeout, this shock to the system. And then with that conjunction July 4th, I think things are then looking really good. And that at least will then, if not on July 4th, that conjunction between Venus and Uranus will be the trigger for that to occur as they then move into Gemini, Uranus for like 7 years, Venus for about a month, which is connected to all these things. So yeah, are you going to go over today's flares in this live? I did at the beginning of the video. We can look at them again. We had 6 M-class flares, and they were a M3, an M1.4, M5.1, M1.2, a 2.7, and a 4.1, all basically from, all from this cluster here. And most of them coming from Sunspot Group 3982 right there, which has just been going absolutely bonkers. Has been growing super rapidly, and yeah, it's just been wild. Any thoughts on the UAPs and a potential disclosure timeline based on astrology? Well, I I'm getting, well, okay, just in general, with the whole UAP alien disclosure thing, obviously there's some stuff to that. I'm not an expert, but there's a lot of misdirection. We cannot forget right now, if we look at the astrology, that Neptune is in Pisces, which is all about delusion and delulu, and the North Node is there. And so there's a lot of things that are being said right now, which are clearly not going to actually turn out to be the truth, right? They're not the truth, and we'll find that out with time. And you know what's interesting? I told this to my buddy Gary. Like, you look at a lot of these like whistleblowers and they look fucking weird. Like, they just look weird. They're not normal looking people. There's like weird stuff with their face. And not everyone is Aphrodite or Adonis, but I mean, it's just weird. It's just, I just get heebie-jeebies when I'm looking at some of these people, and I trust my intuition. So I think there's a lot of false narratives out there. And the more I'm researching the plasmoids, the more that explains so many of these UAP phenomenon where they're transmedium, because you can have a plasmoid go from the air to the water, or even transmedium with the earth, going from the atmosphere to the earth. That you can also have the plasmoid. We see that with earthquake lights. That's what that is. When there's an earthquake, sometimes it produces plasma that shoots out of the ground. So we don't necessarily need to turn to aliens every time for these explanations. The dripping UAPs, that could be plasma that's actually dripping off the central plasmoid. So they explain a lot of the whole UAP thing. Doesn't mean that there's not consciousness involved. I think there still is. But I think a lot of these narratives out there are wrong, and you'll kind of get a sense of it because there's certain questions that aren't asked during the interviews, which would make a lot of sense to ask. And also, they're like, there's this new venture that we have. You can invest in it, right? So it smells fishy to me. But I believe in aliens. I've had some weird experiences, but yeah, don't believe everything, I would say. Have some more questions here. From Tommy, any predictions for 5/25/25 when Saturn and Neptune are conjunct in Aries at 9 degrees? It wouldn't be 9 degrees. They'll be fairly close to conjunction at 2 degrees. They'll only be a few arc minutes apart. I think that is when we get this first big push with that. But there's this cool off period. They go back into Pisces. They're in Pisces right now. We've seen actually a lot of these markets at their all-time highs with Neptune, Saturn, and Pisces. So we get a return to that at the end of the year. That's why I'm thinking we do have some sort of like maybe blow off top in Q4. Because we kind of get a return to those conditions. We get comfortable with that again. We get a little delulu. The optimism comes back. But then when they kind of go conjunct at 0 degrees in 2026 in February, that's a big shift. I don't know how it's going to impact the financial markets. In regards to the energies here on Earth, we do have a really significant planetary alignment coming up in January 2026. So I don't know what that means in terms of earthquakes or solar activity, but it's not the type of alignment that you see every year. It's like a once every 50, 100 years planetary alignment with Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter. So it's really crazy. I would show you now, but it'd be a little difficult to rearrange my screen to show you that. I've showed it before on the channel. Just keep watching if you're not subscribed, and you'll eventually get that info more in depth. Do solar flares affect our health and wellness, and what do they do to our bodies? From Ingrid. Ingrid, I have a whole bunch of videos on that. So you can just type in like solar flares health on YouTube, solar flares health Stefan Burns on YouTube, and I'll pull it right up. I have a variety of videos, one on geomagnetic storms and health, one on EMFs and health, and one on solar activity and health. So I would check that out. And they're all like hour-long lectures. So yeah. Thank you, Carlos, for the super thanks. There have been many planes of failures. Could it be due to the sun? What conditions could cause the sun to make planes fall or fail? I don't think it's due to the sun, because this is kind of before that solar activity really started to pump back up again. I think things like that are more related to just like archetypal resonance. But that said, you can get conditions that could cause avionics to go haywire. I'm a little hesitant to open up my web browser again. But for example, back in 1956, February 23rd, there was a solar flare that occurred right from here. And it triggered a ground level enhancement, a super powerful radiation storm that spiked up some of the values for neutron counts up like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000%. Basically, a whole bunch of energetic particles were raining down, and at that moment in time, if you had been up where a commercial airliner was, you would have received a lifetime dose of radiation in that flight from that radiation storm, that ground level enhancement. Super flares can be even stronger than that in terms of their effects on the Earth. For example, the 775 Miyake event is estimated to cause a ground level enhancement 70 times stronger than the GLE number 5 of February 23rd, 1956, which is already an epic ground level enhancement. So if something like that was to occur, that could cause some problems, because now you're just having all the electronics in the plane or planes, right, get supercharged. And I mean, we don't know what would happen. We did have a pretty significant ground level enhancement recently, like a year or two ago, that was kind of similar to 1956, and it didn't seem to cause any problems. So there's a lot of backups with this stuff. I wouldn't be super afraid about it. I'd be more concerned about your own health and wellness. So yeah. And I think there was another few more questions here. Can you please check the auroral chart? Do I do personal readings? I don't do personal astrology readings. Let's go here really quick. I'm pulling this back up. I don't want to spend long here. So we can check the aurora chart right now. View line for tonight and tomorrow. And there's also a real-time one. Just got to find it. And there's the real-time one. Okay, let's switch over. Here's the aurora forecast. Tonight, tomorrow, we see an enhancement. They expect some greater geomagnetic activity. KP range is 4. That's actually where we've been. There's already been really good aurora for the past 2-3 days. And we can look at our real time right here. It'll load. And yeah, we can see, you know, some aurora pushing down to the upper United States. They're really now sweeping over more into like Alaska and even into Europe. But this is it's actually going for a while here. So let me do this. That's our aurora forecast for now. Click on the Add tab on YouTube and type in Mauna Kea, Western View, and Meteor Shower. I have no idea what you're talking about. Add tab. Add tab. Pop out, no. Open widget. I don't think it's that. That's a good idea. I'll have to do that sometime in the future. I'll have to learn how to do that. And so, yeah, I just don't know how to do that. Sorry, folks. So it sounds like we are wrapped up. That is everything I wanted to talk about today. I hope you found that all informative. Interesting. We have more things to come as Mercury goes and does its Cazimi, moving very quickly in its superior conjunction on the other side of the sun. That's why it's appearing so bright. And we have that Leo full moon coming up. Always a fiery full moon. I know I am a Leo moon, so I bring it with me 24/7. Yeah, I just wish you all well. Make sure you just take steps to feel good and comfortable, even if things get stressful and things get very volatile. I think in general, we're looking at more energy, more volatility, more chaos, greater polarization, and now starting a mixing of that polarization. Because that's the only way you're going to depolarize something is if you mix it together. That's just what my intuition is telling me. I think a lot of people are intuitively feeling that something's coming. Some sort of storm is coming. That is just such a hot topic right now, and there's a reason for that. It's manifesting into the collective. Whether we want it or not, I think now it's starting to really take steam, and it's kind of needed. Let's be honest. In many aspects, if this reset can kind of be beneficial, it's needed to get things back on track. I mean, wealth inequality is super high, the highest it's ever been. It's ridiculous. People in countries where their financial currency is just plummeting. A lot of people are really struggling, and so maybe kind of an unexpected shock to everything will be good in the long run. We hope. So just make sure you are set and prepared and ready, whatever that means. And this isn't necessarily just like food, water, things of this nature. You should always have some stockpiles. You don't have to get crazy, but you should have some stockpiles. But have a diversity of things that if something goes, don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's what I can say. None of this financial advice, whatever. And yeah, well, I'll keep watching the sun for you and all this other stuff. And yeah, more to come. We have a lot more to come. And actually, we probably have some up-to-date chronograph imagery for that last, for that last coronal mass ejection. So let's check it out quickly before we, oh yeah, that's a monster. Check this out. We got a big coronal mass ejection here, just at the very end. Now we can see it really start to propagate out. Look at that. So yeah, sun's exploding on both sides right now. Both sides. We'll just have to see where this goes. Thank you all so much for joining in, for watching, and I will catch you all very, very soon. Happy Sunday. It is the day of the sun, so it makes sense that we had all this activity. And also, I guess just before I go, reminder, my website, wildfreeorganic.com. I have a whole bunch of natural holistic wellness products. I can grab some really quick. Specifically, spirituality is awesome. This is the tea blend to help you stay calm, cool, collected. Purple lotus flower is a natural anti-xylitic, and it'll help you sleep better. It'll help you connect to your intuition and your higher self. So purple lotus flower, chamomile, mugwort, passion flower, wildfreeorganic.com/store. There's other products too, but this is by far the best seller. I just mixed up a fresh batch today. It's all super fresh, but just today I mixed up a batch with all this activity, so that's definitely bound to be super extra special, supercharged. So pick that up if you want, and more. So yeah, wishing you all well, here to help you every step of the way in many ways, informationally and also physically with products like this. Sending you all lots of love and light. Please take care of yourselves. And thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart out to you. Just so thankful for the mutual support that we give each other. And yeah, just very, very grateful. And I think that's the key. If we do go to this abysmal place, it says specifically, sincere success in heart. Whatever you will do will succeed. And that is the message for 2025, because there's so much initiatory energy here. Saturn and Neptune conjuncting at 0 degrees in Aries in February 2026 promises a massive new beginning, especially in the spiritual domains, because Neptune is there and Saturn, both the mystics. And so sincere success in your heart, whatever you do will succeed. That is